The sun cast a golden glow over the bustling sidewalks of Willow Creek, an upscale suburban neighborhood known for its picturesque coffee shops and well-manicured lawns. Among the morning crowd, Malik Carter walked confidently, the warmth of the late summer air on his skin. He had worked tirelessly to build his reputation in this town. A self-made entrepreneur, a respected activist, and a man who had fought through every obstacle to claim his success. His tech startup had recently secured a multi-million-dollar deal, allowing him to invest in local businesses and create safe spaces for marginalized communities. Today, he was on his way to one such place, a new LGBTQ plus community center he had personally funded. Malik's black t-shirt, emblazoned with a vibrant rainbow flag, was more than just fabric. It was a symbol of everything he had overcome. It represented pride, resilience, and an identity he refused to hide. But to some, it was an invitation for hostility. Enter Karen Whitmore, a self-proclaimed protector of family values, whose entire life revolved around HOA meetings, passive-aggressive Facebook rants, and wielding her privilege like a sword. Karen had spent years curating the illusion of perfection, a wealthy husband, a spotless house, and an air of authority that made her believe she owned this town. But behind the manicured smile and pearl necklace, Karen harbored a deep resentment towards people she deemed unworthy of sharing her space. And today, Malik was her latest target. Karen's eyes locked onto him from across the street as she sipped her overpriced latte. A black man wearing a pride shirt in her neighborhood? The sight made her blood boil. She had already taken issue with the LGBTQ plus center opening, ranting about how it would ruin the community. And now, here was its founder, parading around like he belonged. Her grip tightened around her phone. She would put an end to this. Malik barely noticed her at first. He was used to the stares, the whispers. But when Karen pulled out her phone, her expression twisted with disdain. He felt the familiar unease creeping up his spine. Then, the cold, rehearsed words left her lips. 911. What's your emergency? There's a suspicious man in our neighborhood. He looks aggressive. I think he's a threat. Karen paced her pristine white kitchen, phone in hand, fingers flying across the screen. Her neighborhood watch group chat, a digital echo chamber of paranoia and entitlement, was already buzzing with her latest message. Suspicious man loitering near Main Street, wearing one of those pride shirts. Seemed aggressive. I think he was scoping out businesses. Within minutes, responses flooded in. We need to be careful. Maybe he's casing the area. Should we alert the police? Karen smiled to herself. It was too easy. Meanwhile, Malik continued his morning routine, unaware that a storm was brewing in the background. He had arrived at the LGBTQ plus center, a space he had worked hard to bring into reality. It was more than just a building. It was a safe haven, somewhere young people could gather, free from judgment and fear. The grand opening was just a few days away, and Malik was proud. But as he stepped inside, he noticed something odd. A few of the business owners from the area, people who had been supportive just weeks ago, were suddenly distant. Conversations were shorter, smiles were strained. He overheard hushed whispers as he passed by. At first, he chalked it up to stress. Opening a center like this in a conservative town was bound to ruffle some feathers. But then came the calls. One by one, local sponsors began pulling out. We're really sorry, Malik, but we can't be associated with this controversy right now. We've been hearing some concerning things about your background. You understand, right? We just don't want trouble in the neighborhood. Malik frowned. What controversy? It didn't take long to find out. Karen had been busy. She had spread rumors that Malik was using the center as a political weapon, that it was secretly in anti-family indoctrination camp. She went as far as to claim that Malik had a criminal record, hinting at dangerous connections. She never outright said anything false, just enough to plant doubt. And it was working. Malik tried to confront her, calmly, respectfully, but Karen played innocent. Oh, Malik, I had no idea people were saying those things. I'm just looking out for the neighborhood. I hope you understand. It was a perfectly rehearsed lie. And then came the final blow. An official complaint was filed against the LGBTQ plus center. A petition had been circulating, citing community concerns about noise, safety issues, and moral objections. Malik was stunned. Karen had turned the town against him. And now, he was fighting for everything he had built. The petition against the LGBTQ+ center spread like wildfire. It started as a whisper in the neighborhood watch chat, but soon became a full-blown campaign. Karen had taken things further, knocking on doors, speaking in hushed yet concerned tones about the trouble that Malik Center would bring. "I'm just worried about our children," she would say, her voice dripping with manufactured sincerity. "What kind of people will this place attract?" Her words worked. Soon, flyers appeared on storefronts, urging locals to protect our community and stop the radical agenda. The message was clear: Malik was the enemy. At first, Malik tried to ignore it. He had faced opposition before. Prejudice wasn't new to him. But this was different. His funding took a major hit as more sponsors pulled out, afraid of the controversy Karen had created. His contractors suddenly stopped returning calls, delaying construction. His permit for the grand opening was mysteriously under review, despite everything being approved weeks ago. Then came the most humiliating moment of all. One evening, Malik stopped by a local cafe, one he had frequented for years. The owner, Mark, had always been friendly, often chatting with him about life, business, and the importance of community. But this time, when Malik stepped in, Mark's smile was strained. "Hey, Malik," he said, shifting uncomfortably. "Listen, I think it's best if you don't come around for a while." Malik frowned. "What? Why?" Mark exhaled, rubbing his temples. "People are talking. I don't want to lose customers, man. You understand, right?" The sting of betrayal hit him hard. People he had known for years were turning their backs on him, not because of anything he had done, but because Karen had poisoned their minds with fear and lies. And the worst part? She was winning. The night before the grand opening, Malik sat alone in his office, staring at the growing pile of legal paperwork. Karen had filed a formal complaint with the city, claiming the center was violating zoning laws. It was a baseless accusation, but it was enough to halt operations indefinitely until an investigation was conducted. Malik clenched his fists. She was trying to bury him in bureaucracy. A soft ping interrupted his thoughts. A new email. His eyes widened as he read the subject line. "Anonymous tip. You need to see this." The email contained several attachments. At first, he hesitated, but then, as he clicked through the files, his shock turned to realization. It was Karen's secret, something so damning, so devastating, that it could bring her entire world crashing down. For the first time in weeks, Malik smiled. Karen thought she had control. She had no idea what was coming next. Malik leaned back in his chair, staring at the damning evidence on his screen. His pulse was steady, his mind sharp. Karen had spent weeks tearing him down, spreading lies, turning the community against him, and making sure his LGBTQ+ center never opened. But now, sitting right in front of him, was the truth. And the truth had a way of cutting deeper than any lie. The anonymous tip had arrived just in time. At first, Malik had been skeptical. Who would go out of their way to help him? But as he combed through the documents, it became clear that whoever had sent this wanted Karen to fall just as much as he did. The files exposed her completely. Fraudulent transactions tied to the neighborhood's HOA funds, evidence of bribing city officials to get special treatment, and worst of all, a past that had been swept under the rug. A decade ago, Karen had falsely accused a black teenager of theft. The report detailed how she had called the police on a 17-year-old boy who had been walking past her house. She claimed he had been acting suspicious, that she had seen him near her property several times before. The boy had been arrested, forced to defend himself against a crime he never committed, and ultimately lost a scholarship opportunity because of the incident. Malik exhaled, gripping the edge of his desk. This wasn't just about him anymore. Karen had done this before, used her privilege, her status, her reputation to destroy innocent people. This time, though, she had picked the wrong person. He reached for his phone and began making calls. The first was to a lawyer, a close friend who had been watching Karen's antics unfold from the sidelines. "I need everything in these files verified," Malik said. "I want to make sure there's no way she can claim this is fake." The second call was to a journalist he had worked with before, someone unafraid of exposing corruption. He sent over a few documents, not everything, just enough to bait Karen into thinking she was safe. "If I go public with this," Malik said, "how fast does it spread?" Within hours, the journalist assured him. Perfect. Malik also reached out to a civil rights organization, forwarding them the old police report. "The boy in this case, do you know what happened to him?" he asked. The line was quiet for a moment. Then, "We'll find out." Piece by piece, he set the stage. Meanwhile, Karen was completely oblivious. That night, she sat at her dining table, glass of Chardonnay in one hand, scrolling through her phone with a smirk. The neighborhood chat was on fire after her latest message. The city has officially shut down the LGBTQ+ Center for violations. Looks like our concerns were right after all. People believed her. They always did. Malik had lost his funding, his permits were revoked, and businesses had cut ties with him. He was finished. She laughed to herself. It was too easy. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly see coming, was that the game she had been playing was already over. At exactly 10 p.m., Malik sat in his office, reviewing the last few messages he had sent. The documents were in the right hands. The media was ready. The legal team had everything they needed. All that was left was the final piece, the one thing Karen wouldn't be able to spin, manipulate, or talk her way out of. Malik clicked the last email, double-checked the recipient list, and pressed send. The trap was set. Tomorrow, everything would change. The next morning, the town of Willow Creek woke up to a storm it never saw coming. Malik sat at his desk, sipping his coffee as he refreshed his screen. The headline was already making waves. Community leader faces backlash for decade-long pattern of lies and discrimination. Karen's face was plastered across the article, her shining reputation crumbling in real time. The investigative report laid everything bare. The fraud, the bribery, the false accusations against a black teenager. All undeniable, all public. Within minutes, the article had spread across local and national news sites. The journalist Malik had partnered with had done their job well. Screenshots of Karen's messages, financial records, and legal complaints flooded social media. People shared, commented, and condemned. The once supportive neighborhood watch chat turned on her in an instant. Malik knew it was only a matter of time before Karen found out. And when she did, she lost it. Karen stormed out of her house in a rage, phone in hand, dialing numbers frantically. The HOA president? No answer. Her close friends? Ignoring her calls. The town council? Distancing themselves completely. She slammed her front door shut, flipping through the news reports, her face draining of color as she read the accusations. "This is ridiculous," she hissed. "These are lies. This is a smear campaign." But denial didn't stop the flood. Outside, neighbors whispered and stared as Karen paced her driveway, barking into her phone. "I need someone to make a statement. I've given so much to this community. They can't do this to me." But then came the final blow she never expected. The city announced an official audit of the HOA's financial records. The bribes, the misuse of funds, the illegal approval she had secured over the years. It was all under investigation now. Karen's breath hitched. She clutched her chest, fingers trembling over her phone. Everything was unraveling. That's when Malik arrived. He walked up the sidewalk calm, composed, and victorious. He didn't need to say much. The world already knew the truth. Karen spun toward him, her expression a mixture of rage and desperation. "You did this," she spat. You planted those lies. You ruined my life." Malik tilted his head. "No, Karen. You did that all by yourself." The crowd gathered, watching, recording, whispering. Karen turned toward them, trying one last time to reclaim control. "He's manipulating all of you. He's a fraud. He's dangerous." But no one was listening. One by one, people walked away. The town that had once hung on her every word no longer believed her. Karen Whitmore was finished. Karen sat alone in her now empty house, staring blankly at the screen in front of her. The HOA had officially removed her from her position. Her once loyal friends had cut ties overnight. The city's audit had frozen her accounts, exposing years of financial mismanagement. Her bribes, her lies, her fake influence, everything had come crashing down. Her phone, which had once buzzed with messages from town officials and socialites, was silent. No one wanted to be associated with a fraud. Outside, the town moved on without her. The same people who had once whispered alongside her were now avoiding her gaze. Stores she had frequented turned her away. Invitations she once received never came again. And then came the final humiliation. The city filed legal charges against her for embezzlement and fraudulent activity within the HOA. Karen had spent her life weaponizing the system against others, but now the system had turned on her. Meanwhile, Malik stood in front of his LGBTQ+ center, watching as people cheered and gathered for the grand opening. A celebration that Karen had fought so hard to prevent. But she had failed. The center stood taller than ever, its doors open, its message clear. No one would be silenced here. As Malik stepped onto the stage to deliver his speech, he caught a glimpse of Karen across the street, standing alone, watching from the shadows of the world she no longer controlled. He could have smirked, gloated, or said something to humiliate her further. But he didn't. Instead, he turned toward the crowd, lifted his head, and simply said, "We're here. We're proud. And no one will ever take that from us again." As the crowd cheered, Karen turned away, disappearing into the quiet isolation she had created for herself. For Malik, justice wasn't just about watching Karen fall. It was about rising higher than she ever wanted him to. And he had won.